So now let's take a look at the source code. And I'm so sorry for you guys that I actually shrunk the font size just because it looks a lot neater when it's shrunken down a little. But for those that like big fonts, I'm sorry, I'll use bigger fonts in my future lectures, but this looks a lot more professional and it looks more organized. So let's jump right into it. First thing we do is we declare a class, which is called people. So we start with our basic definition of class. And we want to start by setting up our static class attributes. So we just declare two static attributes and we assign the default values to not available or an A to first name and last name. Secondly, we want to set up our static class constant. We just use a constant, which again is assigned the value Palomar, and it's a constant. It's not a static attribute. It's a constant. This value is not going to be changed and it cannot be reassigned. Next step, we want to use static functions. With static functions, we can assign, let's say we can use our own information when we call this function from our class. So again, using the static keyword, we can now call this function directly from our class. Remember, when we deal with anything static, it's not related to objects. We're not doing anything from objects. It's directly from the class. Once we pass into arguments here, we can use our own information once we call that static function from our class. So an important part when accessing static attributes is that I know we've been using this special pointer to access attributes that belongs to objects, but again we're dealing with static class attributes and we use the keyword self followed by two semicolons and the $sign as if it was a variable with the attribute name. So we actually use the $sign with the attribute name. And of course, we use our information to assign it our values as well. So my first name, we're going to assign that value to first name, the class static attribute. And for our last name, we take our second piece of information and assign it to our last name class static attribute. So again, we're just setting up some static functions. So set name, and then to get these static class attribute values, we use get name. And again, we're referencing the class attributes, the class static attributes with the self keyword. And we use again the double semicolon operator to access our static class attributes. So again, I just want to return the full name or the first name with the space and the last name when we call our get name method or function. So once that's done, that takes care of the class for people. And let me just modify this. Okay, so when we display our things, I've again used HTML, which is H2 tags, which is a header tag, and I centered it as well. And again, we're just using the same skills that we've learned in our previous lectures with constants, static methods as well, and static attributes. So this isn't anything new. So of course, we went ahead and printed out another header title and first name. Look at this. It's the class name followed by two semicolon operators, and we call that class static class attribute with the $sign. So we did that for first name. We did that for the last name, which is here. And for our method, our static method or function, we did the same syntax, which we call the actual class with the same syntax, double semicolon, but with the static method name. Again, we're not referring to objects at all. We passed in two pieces of information, which is first name and last name, and we want to display it. So we went ahead and used the getName method to return our first and last name. For our last piece of information, we used another header class or another header title, which is class constants, and this is how we display our value within our class constant, which is people, with the double semicolon and the constant word without the $sign. So always remember, when we're dealing with anything static, it's relevant to the class, not objects. So that's pretty much the source code and the layout, how I want you guys to fill out your example or do the example.